Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is Casey. You're tuning into Lions Den Investments and Reviews. In today's video, we're going to go over a little bit of technical analysis here on Bitcoin, and then we'll jump into some of the fundamentals here. So, getting started, okay. Before we start anything, I just want to say, uh, I was helping a friend the other day with using Simple Swap. So, I don't know how many of you guys out there use Simple Swap, but here's a little tip for you. If you decide to maybe do a swap with XLM or XRP for a different token, they're going to ask for what they call a memo ID or just kind of a location ID. Okay, what you want to do if you're gonna use a token swap with XLM or XRP for say a different token, what you want to do is make sure that you give them your memo ID or your location ID when you're using a site like SimpleSwap. And the reason for this is because these sites, okay, they have deposits set up and they've got multiple accounts that they hold that are considered wallets. And each one of these accounts is broken down into groups. Okay, so one wallet might have a group of say like 100 different addresses or transactions for deposits. So people are giving their tokens over, and then they're facilitating the transaction for them. And if they're with XLM or XRP, they're going to ask for a memo ID so they can identify you. Okay, this is part of the KYC rules, the Know Your Customer rules. So just a little tip for you: if you're using SimpleSwap or somebody like that, and you're using XLM or XRP to swap for a different token, make sure you give them that memo ID because otherwise, your deposit is not going to it's not going to be accredited or cleared, and it's just going to hang in limbo. And we experienced that the other day with a friend of mine. He forgot to give him his memo ID on swapping XLM for a different token. Um, you can, you know, you can get this fixed. It does take a little bit of time, so you just have to be patient with it. But so you're not being held up, for like 48 hours or so. Just make sure that you include that memo ID because it took literally about 24 hours before his transaction actually went through, and it actually kind of worked out in his favor because the price of the other token that he was trying to get dropped in value at the same time. So he ended up with more tokens than what he initially would have, say if he would have just given the memo ID right away. So just a little bit of advice there, a little tip for you if you're swapping some of these other tokens out. But with that said, that's kind of the tip of the day. Let's get into the technicals here for Bitcoin, guys. Not much has really changed. We've got if we go to a 4-hour chart on the daily, like I was telling you, we formed a higher low. Okay, so that's really good news. It's bullish for the long term, and I would expect that Bitcoin's overall trend is going to continue heading higher. Now, if we go to the 4-hour though, okay, you can see right in here this 4-hour chart, and it's funny because I was pointing this out the other day, and originally I thought that we had a double bottom going here. Okay, so it would have looked like this, and that's bullish because you end up going higher like this. Okay, that's what they call a double bottom. It's a reversal pattern. However, if you look at it now, look what it's doing. It's actually going back down and retesting for a third time. So we got a support right here, okay, around 53,271, and you can see we've retested it once, twice. Now we've retested a third time, and look what's happening. Okay, we're heading up, still kind of going bouncing up and down, but if you look at this, this is a typical what they call a head and shoulders pattern. Okay, it's a reverse head and shoulders. Now that's extremely bullish too. Okay, and that's kind of what I'm seeing form out right here. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with Bitcoin because we're still down below this EMA ribbon right here on the bottom. Okay, these are moving averages, by the way. It's called the EMA ribbon. So if you ever want to know how to go out and put that on your chart, just go to your indicators here. Okay, right now it's not working for some reason. It's not refreshing, but you click on indicators, just type in EMA ribbon, and it'll be one of those tools that pops up, and you can add this in. But it's got all your different moving averages here, and as long as you're on top of the moving average, like what we're seeing back here, you know, you get your signals. So you get a long buy signal here, and you can see we just stay on top of that moving average there, and the price goes up. But when it crosses back down through all the moving averages, and you get down on the bottom here, you're looking kind of bearish. Okay, extremely bearish in this scenario. But technicals. This is why I pay attention to fundamentals, because if you focus too much on the technicals, you miss what's driving these price movements, and that's usually the fundamentals. And we talked about that in the last video. If you haven't watched that video, I'll leave a link somewhere in the top here where you can go watch. But I was talking about the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the fundamentals that are driving these prices. So you need to pay attention to that, because you can get lost, in the weeds here with the technicals, and you can miss something. And right now, the fundamentals, guys, are extremely bullish for cryptos. So let's get into that real quick, okay? So that's Bitcoin. I would expect, honestly, before we get into that, I would expect Bitcoin, like I said, we'll have to let it play out here. We may retest this support again, but if we bounce off of that here right at about 53,000, you can expect we're going to go higher. Okay, now I could be wrong on that, but the probability would be less and less as we retest this and head higher. So that's Bitcoin. That's all I'm going to cover for technicals today, because right now the market's pretty much all in green, looking pretty good. Ethereum's up over 8.5%. All right, so if Bitcoin decides to go down a little bit, and we can continue staying bullish with Ethereum, you might see the beginning of the altcoin season here too. And we get a really, really good pump going in the altcoins. But back to the fundamentals, check this out. This was an article that came out on CoinDesk as of yesterday. The U.S. House passes a bill to require financial regulators to set up digital assets working group. Yeah, check that out, guys. So this is now in the hands of Congress, and the bill is being passed for setting up digital assets working group for financial regulators. And I'm not going to read through this article. I'll leave a link in the description so you can go read it for yourself. But I need to give credit where credit's due here. One of the YouTube guys here, XRP Chiz, give a shout out to you, man, because I was looking for this video. I couldn't find it anywhere else. So I'll give credit where credit's due. He's got a video here where he's talking about. He basically found a video from a congressman, okay? And the congressman here is going to talk to you about basically what they're talking about in here, which is that U.S. House passing the bill. And this is what he had to say about it. So let's go ahead and take a listen here.
For my bill, the barriers to eliminating the Barriers to Innovation Act. This is a bipartisan bill that addresses the much-needed collaboration between the Commodities Futures Trading Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission. What we have is a regulation of commodities through one entity of our federal government here in the United States, and regulation of securities by another entity of our government. What we need is conversation between those two entities about the nature of digital assets and cryptocurrencies. We have neither a security nor a commodity in what is a new creation of digital assets. Now,
yeah, that's a good point. That's what he's talking about here. We don't have any clarity between what's a security, what's a commodity, but they're treating them as commodities right now. So like when you go to, come tax time, when you go to report your taxes, they're going to treat it as a commodity or a property, okay? And so he's trying to get better regulations on that, because some of these assets aren't really commodities, they're utilities, okay? Or they're used for digital currency. So they could be taxed differently at a later date. Keep that in mind as well.
What we see with the CFTC is that everything is a commodity in their worldview. And the Securities and Exchange Commission thinks, well, you're close, everything's actually a security. And so they each want to regulate something that is not in their nature to regulate, or not in the substance of their capacity to regulate. And so we have neither fish nor fowl, neither security nor what the Commodities Futures Trading Commission wants to regulate in their world. And so you have neither fish nor fowl when it comes to this new creation of cryptocurrencies. The fact is that the Bitcoin white paper written by somebody that called themselves Satoshi Nakamoto, is more than a decade old. And what we've seen in that time period is the valuation of Bitcoin, and then things that are like Bitcoin that use an encrypted ledger system in the blockchain.
Now, you think he might be referring to XRP and Ripple there? I don't know. Let's hear what he has to say.
And tokenization to open up the value of that new creation of a blockchain. And that new creation of cryptocurrencies is now valued at over $2 trillion globally. Most of that innovation has happened outside of the United States because we don't have a legal and regulatory framework that is permissive of the raising of capital in order to develop those technologies. So people in the United States, American citizens, are missing out on innovation and the potential economic upside of those innovations. I would say this is one of the few pieces of technology in the last 100 years that the Americans have not been the drivers of. In fact, we're reacting a lot to what's happening globally. And so I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Lynch, for his thoughtful engagement on this bill and his important structural changes to make sure that this can be a bipartisan bill. And those conversations really are that balance between.
You know, I gotta stop right there because he's talking about this is the first time that we haven't, the private sector has not had control over clarification and regulations or been a part of that in the last 100 years. You know what that says to me? That tells me we got a transfer of wealth that's in full effect. That's what that tells me because you've got Congress now talking about this. You got the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and then the SEC who are both they've got their own opinions and views about it. So everybody's fighting over it basically, and they're kind of just leaving the private sector in the dark here. And I'll get to that here in a minute because they're talking about, this goes hand in hand with the SEC and the XRP case. That's why it's so important for the crypto industry because they're trying to decide what is XRP, what's that clarified as, and if you're going to clarify XRP, you might as well, put regulations and clarity under the regulatory framework for the blockchain space as a whole. So we'll keep playing it here.
Economic opportunity and growth that a lot of us on the Republican side want to emphasize at all costs, frankly, and then the protection of our citizens that some on the left want to have at all costs. And so the balance here, striking that balance is really necessary for us as legislators. Let's just be pragmatic and honest about it. And so Mr. Lynch has brought some nice changes to this bill that actually will enable it to be a bipartisan vote, I hope. So what this bill does is, with our colleagues from the House Agriculture Committee, is it requires the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Commodities Future Trading Commission to establish a working group focused on digital assets.
Yeah, there you go. They're creating the working group so they can bring both sides together and streamline that communication so everybody can come to an agreement just on what everything is. That way they're not fighting over it.
This is the first step to opening the dialogue between our regulators and market participants and move to much needed clarity. The fact is this working group will produce a report within a year that includes an analysis of the domestic regulatory framework necessary for the development of cryptocurrencies and digital assets here in the United States.
Boom. Okay, we'll end it right there. So they're talking about within the year, right? Coming back with a report on what their clarification and regulation framework is going to be. Guys, this is extremely bullish. Like I was just saying with fundamentals, okay, you get all this FUD like this and it drops the price short term. People freak out. The sheep end up selling, at all-time lows, thinking it's going to go lower. And then it turns right back around. It heads higher. And what do? They jump in at the very top. And then they're buying in at all-time highs. And we're not through with this crypto cycle yet, okay, or this bull run by any means. And that's what I've been saying for a long time now because I follow the fundamentals. Technically, yes, we're in a short-term kind of bearish situation, but that could turn around at any minute. And stuff like this helps flip that price and keep the price going up. That's all I had on that. Let's move over here though, because this is from Financial Feeds. The CFTC eyes the SEC versus Ripple for regulatory clarity. And, Commissioner Stump concluded by saying regulators must enable innovators to think creatively and acknowledge there will be a differences of opinion as to the utility and potential of various products. Now, I'm not going to go into this whole thing here, but needless to say, basically the CFTC, after just hearing what he said, Harvey there for the Congress, the video I just showed you, they're getting ready, guys. They know it's game time now, and they've got their work cut out for them. So, um, they're eyeing this case very, very closely because now that you got this working digital asset group that they're forming, they're going to be able to take this Ripple case, whatever the outcome is of that, and build off of that. So that's again extremely bullish for me as an investor in the blockchain space. You just got to look at the technology and what it does. Okay, when you're looking at your projects and take it from there. So let's go to this last one here. This is extremely bullish news too. Now we've got the former get rid of that the former top banking regulator Brian Brooks. Okay, he was the comptroller of the U.S. currency under the Trump administration. Guess he is now the CEO of Binance.us. Out of all people, who would have thought? Who would have guessed? This is good too because Binance.us, guys, if you're a U.S. customer like myself, Binance.us is very limited to the tokens that they have out there for you to buy. And with Brian Brooks overseeing this, he's going to be able to comply, okay, and deal directly with this working digital asset group once more regulations come about through these reports that they're doing for the framework on the regulatory side. He's going to be like right there in the mix of everything, being a CEO for one of the exchanges. So, that's great for U.S. customers, in my opinion. Um, Anyways, that's all I have for today. Like I said, guys, short term, you might see and feel that bearish sentiment going in the market. But like I always say, you got to have strong hands. Don't get shaken out. Okay, these big banks. Talking about big banks for a minute. One little thing I want to throw in here. CoinShare, I think, is the name of the company. It's a digital asset management like fund basically for big institutional banks. And right now, they reported that the money tracking on their end from big institutional banks just over the last week, most all the money that's coming in is going into XRP. Okay, so you know, again, that's extremely bullish. So when you get these little fear and FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt situations that cause the price to go down a little bit, don't sweat it. Okay, be a lion, don't be a sheep. Like, you don't want to sit here and just go along with the herd. Okay, and with that said, as usual, fear nothing, my friends. Till next time.